Greetings everyone, my name is Flare Blitz and welcome to Selene Apoptosis. Back in October 2020 we played the demo of this game when it released, and now the full game is here for us. A beautiful stranger appears at your doorstep. Will you let her in? Or you leave her out in the damp cold? Dive into a captivating nightmare and decide the fates of those around you in this free mystic thriller visual novel. We will start our adventure anew. Thank you very much. There'll be a link down in the description below. This game is free to play, but there are ways in which you can support the developers by purchasing a few DLC goodies. And something along the lines of we're back. The sound was driving him crazy. Monotonous, muffled thuds were resonating throughout his head with dull pain. The pain wasn't too strong, nothing unbearable. But that sound, more than anything else, he wanted the sound to just stop. Thud. Nonetheless, the knocking sounds didn't end. He knew it well enough because he himself was their origin. Thud, thud, thud. Thudding over and over again. Laptop. The noise of his slipper was hitting the rear of his desk over and over again, like a huge fluffy moth frantically ramming against the window glass. He wanted plenty of things. He wanted to pay the rent in time this month, not to displease his landlady again. He wants to finish the script, at least in draft, because a draft is way better than nothing, something one can work with. And, most of all, he wanted to sleep. No, not quite that. The problem, a serious one, was that he didn't really want to sleep. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his shut eyes, pressing his eyeballs until dancing pale lights appeared. Of course, he took the sleeping pills. When a healthy 8-hour sleep gives way to a not-so-healthy 5-hour nap, then a 3-hour eyes shut break and then goes away entirely, you stop thinking how this would impact your liver. You just want to sleep. You need to sleep. Especially if you've already taken an advance payment for the first part of a gig, and the goddamn text just won't write itself. However, if the text could in fact write itself somehow, yeah, that's called AI nowadays, he would probably lose his job. He didn't have any illusions in this regard. As soon as neural networks get smart enough, he and dozens of others, ghostwriters, will vanish into morning mist of a new era in literature. He didn't have much of a name or connections, only some skill and a knack to meet the deadlines for the most part. The client was content with this, and he was content with the pay. So everything went well until the pills started failing him. Blam. This time the tic got too strong. His foot jerked and hit the board with very noticeable pain. Seemed like he even heard his toes crack. Ouch. He muttered a short curse and rolled the chair away from the desk. Although he knew, now that his attention was not fixed on the blank text file, the tic should go away all by itself. It's funny how the consciousness is detached from the body. He often thought about it, especially while having insomnia. It's like you're working as a team, but your partner starts pulling something. You seem to have common goals, but when all hell breaks loose, you are suddenly left alone with it, and your partner is more interested in watching the fire than fighting it. In the end, you have no idea what's on his mind. Or at least there won't be any more knocking. Good. If you say so. A small window at the far side of the room flashed white for a moment. A storm? Now that he thought about, the day was hot. The vicious, stagnant air still filled the room. This and the barely audible squeak from an overheated network filter. He became sensitive to such things when he couldn't sleep for a long time. Made the entire room seem to vibrate a little, like a cocoon that's about to hatch. Actually, That did sound like a good line. He rolled back to the table and was about to write the thought down, but he paused over the keyboard. He remembered the individual words and the general idea, but the sentence had already slipped away. This time, the white light seemed to fill the entire room. A flash of thunder, then a thunder followed, resembling a low gut roar of something large and famished. Good Lord. He called to God way too often for someone who never goes to church. Just a habit he inherited from his mother. A furious patter of raindrops pounded on his window, so he pondered there. There's no way he could work like this. Not now. But maybe it's for the best. Since he was a little boy, he slept well during the storms. Had to seize the moment. He groped for a packer of sleeping pills. It's nice to have your working tools at hand. Popped the pills into his mouth and opened the window to hear the steady patter of the rain. Then he went to the bed and collapsed on top of the bed sheets, his clothes still on. And off we go to Daydream Land, or Nighttime Land. He could tell by the sound the water had flooded the windowsill and was trickling down to the floor. Best close that. He decided that was a small price to pay. He felt a pleasant chill of cloth beneath his cheek. The wavering haze was gradually fading from the room. Yet the sleep did not come. He tried to take off his shoes, change position, take a pillow, cover himself, throw the pillow away to the other side of the room. Nothing happened. He just laid there with his eyes closed, and though his closed eyelids felt heavy, he knew it was an illusion. All in vain. He's not sleeping. He can't sleep. Whoa! What kind of red room conspiracy is this? Thud. At first he thought he was imagining things. Thud, thud, thud. Sometimes the knocking passed, but it never stopped completely. The sound came from below, from the first floor. Someone was banging insistently on the door. And with each thud he could feel the rage building up like a tight knot of pain around his stomach. He is trying to sleep. Is it really that hard to just leave a man alone? At least at night, at least in the house that he pays for specifically so that nobody would bother him. He opened his eyes, easy just as he thought, sprung to his feet and ran down the stairs. Something was boiling inside him, something very, very furious-like. Halfway to the door, he took a turn to the cupboard and pulled out an old baseball bat. He wasn't likely to actually use it, but it was more or less a deterrent. He asked himself if he would, as he reached for the door handle. No, he certainly wouldn't, but he's angry, and he wants the night guest to learn it. What the hell? The rain was still pouring, or rather, it was actually getting stronger. As his mother would say, and the floodgates of heaven tore open. His mother used to say a lot of things. That was on the list of reasons why he had to rent this overpriced house where anyone could start banging the door in the middle of the night. A cat, for example. What the hell? Oh, so it is indeed a half human, half cat. He said again, this time aloud. The cat was standing on his porch. She looked like a purebred British short hair in all respects, except for the colour. Aside from the smoky grey head, it seems as if she was dropped into a vat of white paint, while her lower part was dipped into a black one. Wet fur clung to her small, rather skinny body, dripping with water. What kind of cats live in this universe? The cat could have probably slipped into the house as soon as the door opened, but instead she froze, as if waiting for the host to say something. Refuse. It will be raining again soon. Refuse. Yes, refuse. So the game is just not allowing us to have the option, Untitled. And I don't know what that is saying on the top right hand corner of the screen there. I'll have to kind of zoom in and see what's going on. I guess we're going to have the letter in. It was cold outside, much colder than one might think. He didn't feel angry anymore. All right, come in. He stepped aside, freeing the doorway. The cat didn't move. So, you don't want to, huh? He was about to say, fine then, close the door and go back to the second floor and lie in a suffocating half-sleep until morning. But he finally realized what was wrong. The bat. He threw it away, aiming for the sofa, but missed. The bat clattered on the floorboards. The cat followed it into the darkness with her round yellow eyes. The sounds didn't frighten her. He sighed. I won't hurt you. Come in if you want. The cat raised her eyes at him. For the first time, he actually saw and couldn't help admiring how big and yellow they were. The eyes? The cat's pupils were also large and incredibly round, like 2 full moons in an eclipse. Just as he was about to close the door for the second time, the cat murmured something and fluttered into the house, butting him with her wet head as she passed by. He smiled. Strictly speaking, at this very moment his line had ended. If the landlady found out, and he was sure she would, he'd have to look for a new place to live. There are plenty of lonely, bored seniors in the neighborhood, he thought, and they only had 2 hobbies, observing and reporting. The subject and the recipient aren't that important. Well, that's fine. Maybe he'd leave the suburbs. Maybe he'd move to an apartment, since him getting privacy didn't work out anyway. The rain was getting stronger still. He closed the door. The cat explored the house with cautious curiosity. Stopping by different objects as if trying to understand their purpose. Watching that was amusing, so amusing he even forgot about the stain. When he remembered, he had already spread out a dark spot of water in the place where the cat clung to him. He pulled the wet cloth away from his body and stared at it blankly for a moment, then almost groaned aloud. The cat was soaked, so she probably got a lot of dirt in the house. He decided not to turn on the light. He had enough disappointment for the night. Instead, he went to get a towel. All right, come here. The cat turned her head to the voice and froze in place. She was examining the TV, a lifeless black mirror of a plasma panel in a lacquer frame that he hadn't even touched since moving in. In the reflection, the cat herself looked black. She gave him a long, appraising look and then, with a sudden eagerness, trotted towards him, deftly avoiding the obstacles. He was surprised. Maybe the cat decided he was more interesting than the TV, or maybe she acted out of respect for her host's will. In a way, he felt grateful. Finally, someone he can actually negotiate with. Suddenly he thought how nice it would be to crawl under the blanket with a warm ball of fur. It would surely have helped him to fall asleep. As a child, he had a cat. Grey, huge, brash, immensely ugly, and equally beloved. Maybe this cat is the reincarnation of it, minus the immensely ugly part. He often fell asleep hugging him. The cat's name was Timo, and he faded into a June night many years ago. The cat bumped her wet head against him once more. He thought the cats usually shake off water themselves. Usually, but perhaps not always. In this timeline, you do even more for the cat. You wash them. You make sure that they're dry. Among other things. Hey, easy there, you're all wet. The cat looked up at him with her moon-shaped eyes and murmured something again. Do something about it then. Hey, I'm the boss of this house. You don't go ordering me around, okay? I'll point you to the front door if you keep being rude. I'm kidding. He smiled and got to work. He had to squeeze the fur thoroughly, so the towel soon turned into a wet rag. Should he? Should we? No, don't matter. Should we bathe the cat or not? No. Doesn't matter. Never mind. This can wait. Cat's fur wasn't very long, but it was fluffy enough to hide her sunken sides. He was once again surprised at how skinny she was. He was even more surprised when he noticed a collar with a small locket. So you do have a home. In this case, you also have some questionable owners, I must say. The cat curled up on the wet towel in his lap, slowly dozing off. He could feel that familiar lulling vibe emerging inside her. Suddenly, he put the towel with the cat on it away. I should get you some food. Let me see what I have. He got up with just a tad bit difficulty, nothing he couldn't handle. Still, his body felt unusually heavy and unwieldy. He had to give the cat something to eat. He will lie down afterwards, and then, hell, maybe he'll even fall asleep. Maybe he should have gotten a cat from much earlier. A ball of fur with a pair of moon eyes and a velvety voice that you can always negotiate with. And that's about it. That's kind of funny. How could have avoided all that suffering if he only had a cat? Cats either do two things. They are in the most stupidest of places, or they are your masters. You feed on... you do every one of their biddings. In the midst of the kitchen blurred before his eyes. He got to the refrigerator and opened it, squinting from the light and leaning on the doorway harder than he was supposed to. If the landlady was around at the time, she would have told him exactly so. Don't lean on the door. After all, this is her house and her refrigerator, and everything should be neat and tidy in case she has to move new tenants in. Perhaps the landlady would have even warned him about the milk. The milk itself is completely harmless, unless of course you are allergic to lactose. But there is a special kind of lactose-free milk, right? What matters is the bottle. Bottles, much like cats, can vary greatly, but this particular one was made of glass. If only the landlady was here, she would probably have told him not to touch the bottle because he's falling on the floor and the bottle might break and then the milk will spill and he will have nothing to feed the nice cat he found, or rather it was her who found him, and very timely because he was lying on the floor. He had been lying there for some time and would have been lying still if he hadn't felt the light touch of something hot and rough on his cheek. It was almost like a dream, although of course comparing sleep with fainting isn't quite correct no matter how you look at it. The floor beneath him was surprisingly hard, cold and wet. He felt all of those three qualities clearly and was afraid to imagine what would happen if he tried to move, because he had to move one way or another. At least to see what's up, because something hot and rough was still sliding up his cheek, gradually creeping up to his ear. Goodness sakes, cat, could you leave us alone with some peace and quiet? He felt a warm breath within a curious bite. Ouch! He jumped on the spot. A shadow rushed to the side and then calmly began to lap milk from a puddle. Oh gosh, this is mess on the floor, but... There, you really are, cat. You got the tail as well, along with the ears. And with the legs, feet, something along those lines. Well, she's dealing with a mess that we created. The cheek that she has to do that. The cat, what are you doing? The cat looked at him briefly and licked her lips.
No need to be this dramatic.
You were lying around idly, and you're not even a cat, see?
Yes, that's correct.
Besides, you're soaked in milk.
Yep. Well, you're right. I let you down and had to get my punishment. I let myself down too. Good Lord, now there's cleaning to do until the next Advent, like his mother would have said. I'll go get a rag. Stay here and don't ruin what's left of the kitchen while I'm gone. The cat watched him go with a skeptical look, while she continuously lavishes with the milk on the floor.
The one who's been causing all the trouble so far?
What do you mean, aren't you the one who's... Excuse me? You're the one who came into our house? When he returned with the bucket, the cat was gone. The theatre of presents. Also presents. I want to bake something. In the kitchen, something exciting is happening. Take blah. You will need a blade. Did you take the pills? Scratch out the entrails. The Egyptians widely used honey for embalming and preserved food. Later, their receipts were adopted by the Greeks. Also add a teaspoon of apricot jam, a walnut, and a little cinnamon. Before baking, put a teaspoon of butter on top of nia. Microwave for 5 to 7 minutes at full power. Don't listen to them scream. That is just part of the experiment. Bon appetit. We have ourselves food for the cat. What even is this cutscene for? The next time we saw her was in a few days, maybe in a week. He always had a bad sense of time, especially when he was immersed in his work. He still couldn't sleep, but at least he was making some progress with the script. It was a narrative game project, as the customer called it, but actually meant do whatever you have to finish in on time. Else forget about the payment. Yeah. What if this is a teaser for the developer's next game? And so he did, although he was resentful and that got in the way a lot. The reason for those feelings was the cat. He knew how stupid that was, but he couldn't help it. He forgave her for the bite almost immediately. That wasn't the thing. He was bitter about how the cat ran away, despite him trying his best to take care of her. She was nowhere to be found in the house, so he immediately thought about an open window on the second floor. Maybe he should have closed it. Perhaps because of the fact that we didn't bathe the cat. He dwelled on the thought for a while. He even approached the window at some point, but in the end he decided not to do anything about it. He was hoping, and there was no shame in that, it's not the same as you turn up 10 and start eyeing girls, the cat would come back. And she did. But why? He had just settled himself on the sofa with some book. Some was the word, as he couldn't remember a thing from the cover, even though he read the title several times. The symbols were floating before his eyes, and of course he couldn't make out a word. No wonder, considering he didn't sleep at all. When you think about it, it was surprising he could write in this state. Either way, he was barely following the book, so he wasn't upset at all when a fluffy head butted his hand. Hey, I'm trying to read here. Hello?
And you don't seem to be getting anywhere.
Hey, don't you judge me, okay? I have my own issues at hand, thank you very much. Such as this this cat that constantly needs attention.
What's the matter anyways?
Excuse me?
Better scratch me right here.
No. He complied. What about just pat? Pat the cat. You were absent for so long. I thought you won't be back.
Then why didn't you close the window upstairs?
There's a big difference between expectations and hopes. You had learned that well. Why did you leave? Did I do anything wrong? The cat stayed silent. Bitterness? Is it bitterness that was the cause of it? Oh, don't mind me. I'm here to collect the tomato soup. Alright, doesn't matter that much. I'm happy to have you back. After all, there's no point in this grudge from the start. Nobody gains anything by holding on to small grudges and staying blind to what they really feel. You wouldn't have won anything. It's not a damn lottery. The cat rubbed against his arm again. He put the book down and gently placed her on his lap. The locket around her neck, unexpectedly cold, touched his skin. Then he got a hunch. Did you go home?
I have no home.
You have no home? How is that the case? Everyone has a home. Everyone requires a home. Well, someone must be caring about you if they put that collar on.
Sometimes a collar is just a collar.
Exactly. Sometimes something doesn't really have a huge meaning. It's just there, and you don't need to know the ups and downs and the specifics or generalistic reasons as to why?
No.
No. This time it was him who stayed silent. The cat buried her head in his stomach. Want me to take it off?
No. It is mine now.
Exactly.
Besides, it's easier this way if I catch someone's eye on the streets.
How comes? Oh, because of the locket. People will be curious about the locket. He nodded because if you think about it, that really was a reasonable choice. The cat's fur was thick and smooth, very pleasant to the touch. He wanted to bury his face in it, find out what it smelled like, what she smells like. Do you have a name?
Of course.
What is your name then, Selene Apoptosis?
Everything has a name.
And what is your name? And what's yours? The cat looked at him carefully with her bright yellow eyes as if saying, take a guess. But she didn't actually say anything. On her locket there was a small engraving, a crescent moon that was dimly shining in the pale light coming out of the window. Selene. The cat looked up at him, and her pupils flickered into two full moons in an eclipse. Then she rubbed against his arm one last time and stood up, stretching her back. Don't close the window
on the second floor.
Oh, my bad. Don't close the window on the second floor. I won't. She left, but the name stayed with him in and around the house. Why is his cat a fleeting memory? Selene. So hummed the glass, white in the moonlight. So whispered the long shadows of the branches outside the window. It don't matter about the name, Selene. He wasn't sleeping, but his house was, and its lullaby was woven with one single word. And what would that one word be? Not Selene, is it? Focus on the work. He had a suspicion concerning rats for a while already. At times, something scratched inside the walls, and he became sensitive to such things when he could not sleep for a long time. Faced with these symptoms, the last time he took a flashlight and some stick, and then circled the house for a long time, tapping the walls here and there. He had no idea how to deal with rats. At least that's what he thought until he remembered how his mother used to handle this. After Timo had vanished, poison became a weapon of choice when it came to dealing with rats, the kind that should be kept away from small children and pets. Having remembered this, he went out to the hardware store and filled the cart with colourful packages. Colourful packages, for goodness sakes. It's always best to try the deterrence route first, rather than the lethal route. Then he thoroughly stewed the whole house with bright, deadly pellets that crunched under his feet when he went to get coffee. After a while, the sounds stopped. Yet he could hear them again. Something was scratching. It's been a long time, so no wonder. Those pests always come back. That's what his mother would say. And this time he'd agree with her completely on the matter. He considered his options. He had no poison left, and he could not go out to restock. He was completely immersed in his work, and although he was now much closer to the end of his script than to its beginning, there was still much to be done. Although he couldn't sleep, he still couldn't work, and it would be stupid to lose pace just to go shopping. Besides, he now had a cat. He didn't really own her, of course, but she came to him, and he always made sure that she ate well. He had to take care about her safety. No, poison was not an option. Of course, he considered asking the cat to do the job, but every time she came, the thought completely vanished from his mind. They had other things than rats to talk about, like pets. He told her a lot about his work and sometimes read what he wrote. The cat rarely gave any comments, but never refused to listen. He liked that about her. Not only that, of course. Take her scent, for example. She smelled of warm fur, dust, and something sweet. This may sound simple, but the smell made his heart ache with sadness and unbearable love. It was the smell of a warm June night in which Timo had vanished, and also many, many beloved cats before and after him. This cat, however, was an exception, was special. He could feel it, although he couldn't articulate it, couldn't find the right words because there were none to describe such a beauty. What a writer you are if you can't find the words. That's what he would say if he was talking to himself. But he never did such things, even if he couldn't sleep for a long time. At least you can work, said the computer screen, flickering in the dark. But he couldn't, as at that very moment he heard the thing again. Something scratched, and this time the sound was different. He swung around and looked behind him, then swallowed hard, staring into the darkness. Suddenly his head cleared up. Something is coming, said the computer screen. What the hell? Why did the computer screen say that? Careful, said the flat white ceiling lamp. It should be downstairs, said the crumpled bed. Downstairs? The first floor was dark. They were in slumber, just like the rest of the house. There is no point in turning on the light if you are going to stay in the same room typing all night, and all morning, and all day, and all the next night too. Unless, of course, the cat comes. And even if he had to go out, he knew the house perfectly well, even bonded with it. He needed no light to get anywhere he wanted. Yeah, after a while, when you live in your own house, or any amount of time that it would take to get accustomed to the house, you know geographically where everything is, so you can walk around in the darkness and have a vague idea of where things are so you don't slam into things. That's why he won't turn on the lights, so the one who scratches wouldn't know that he knows. He decided so as he went down the stairs silently. Cats can see in the dark after all. Whoa, it's a bit red. Downstairs was quiet. Too quiet, as one green ogre would say. He listened to the silence for a few minutes, but it sounded unconvincing. If something had started scratching, it won't go away that easy. He knew that for sure. Those pests always come back. They always come back, and in greater numbers. He had to arm himself somehow. With the bat, for example. He still hadn't put the bat away, so it was lying somewhere in the dark living room, heavy and reliable. All he had to do was to reach it before the one who scratches gets back to his work. It's still red. As he passed the kitchen, a prickly shiver ran through him, as if someone was looking at him from the darkness of the room. Or was the room itself watching him? Either way, he knew better than to turn and peer into the dark maw of the entrance. If he does, if he dares, something will come out. Something he doesn't want to know about, like the cat. He found the bat under the dresser, and just in time because the next moment he wouldn't have been able to move. Whoa! Something was scratching in the walls. A new disgusting sound that had nothing to do with the rats. To be more precise, this new sound could not have, anything to do with any living being. Whoa. Screeks! A painful spasm passed through his body. He crouched as if someone had hit him in the gut, and then he did something stupid. Stop it! Who is that? What is that? Please, stop! We see red. I can't take it anymore! What? But the nightmares don't end just because you asked politely, or because you really can't take it anymore. It felt like the voice didn't belong to him. Of course, the voice was his own. But he certainly would have never done something like that. You never talk to the one who scratches. Screeks! Whoa. You felt right. You'd probably better if there was any visible traces left. Is that like a human form of a rat then? but there were none. Only the screech here and there, as if something was trying its strength on the house, looking around for something, looking for him. He regretted speaking out loud many, many times. It would have been better if he died quietly right there. This would have solved so many problems, like life itself. But we're back in the kitchen nonetheless. No, the living room. He was leaning against the back of the sofa and quietly whimpering when it was silent, as suddenly it had began. For a while he continued sitting, croaked like a giant fetus, hugging his knees and his back, and only moved when he really believed that everything has calmed down. Whoa, something is still there in the mind. In that very moment, the round metal handle on the back door began to shiver. He didn't immediately realize where the sound was coming from, the soft rattle of metal and glass, but he had a clue. The transparent glass on the back door was closed by a thin polka-dotted curtain, and it trembled in rhythm with the sounds. And the house got quiet again. Some force, the same one that beckons to the window on high fives, called him to look behind that polka-dotted curtain. He knew just one look would be enough to make him lose his mind, but the call was too hard to resist. And he hadn't slept for too long. Slowly, as if half asleep, he made his way to the door. He could see the pattern clearly now. So close it was. Small dots, each one quivering with a silent cry. Do not look. Do not look. Do not look. He yanked the curtain aside and stared into the darkness with the eyes of a man facing a truck moving at full speed. Of course, there was no one at the door. After that, he decided to always keep the bat nearby, just a scratch, if you say so. The bats were talking muppets. You never got over it, did you? What are we acting with these puppets anyways? Maybe they're controlled. Oh, we're here again.
Is something wrong?
Yes, a lot. The cat was lying on his lap. It had been a long time since her last visit, much longer than he would have liked. I don't know. Something is happening to me, and it's not insomnia. As if I'm missing something. As if something is missing inside of me. I can't explain it well enough, but maybe you know what I mean? The cat was staring at nothing in silence, something only cats can do right. Do you believe in ghosts?
Why would you ask?
Exactly. I think I've run into something I can't quite explain. The cat was silent for a while. Maybe?
It is a matter of perspective.
What do you mean?
That which you've lost, those who you've lost. The number gets bigger over time. The struggle is not to become a ghost yourself. Before time, I mean.
Something tight in his throat.
I didn't want to upset you. I really didn't.
I don't want to lose you. Is it possible? The cat looked at him for a long time, and her pupils, unusually large, looked as black as a moonless light.
Scratch my ear, alright?
An ear. Which ear?
I'll sing you the best song.
I like all of your songs.
I know, but I'll sing the best one.
He ran his head through the warm, thick fur that smelled of dust and something sweet. The cat was smiling at him, lying in his arms. He could feel, with all of his being, the vibrations of another, very different world as they were lulling his body. The next time he heard of the one who scratches right beneath his window. Beneath the open window on the second floor, to be precise. At that moment he was struggling with a tough scene near the story's ending. Imagining things is quite common if he hadn't slept for a while, and did a good job on burning out. You think you're hearing things, like as if someone is quietly slurping in the far corner of the room, just beyond where your eye can see. Or, for instance, as if it's scratching the wall and brick crumbs are getting stuck under its nails, and it's climbing higher and higher. He realized it could all be in his head, so he took his hands off the keyboard and listened carefully, just in case. It could be that nothing was actually scratching, but his body already knew what was going on. It became cold and stiff, exactly like a house wall. Oh yeah, boy, do you hear it? Why, of course you hear it. Why would it be any different? After all, the one whose scratches finally smelled you, and now it won't back off. Squeaks! And that's when his nervous tick came in. Squeak! Thud. Squeak! Thud. What a duo they were. He had to hold his breath to keep back the mixture of hysterical giggles and sobs trying to burst out of his chest. If they had escaped, this he knew, that would have been the end of him. And otherwise he still had a chance. A pretty, solid, baseball bat-like chance. If he had managed to suppress the tick, that is. When the text doesn't work out, just look away from the screen and wait a little. The tick will subside by itself. But what about the case when the one who scratches is creeping up the wall higher and higher so you can hear its nails? And it's got oh so many of them, leaving tiny, tiny grooves in the house's cladding. They are very sharp, those nails. Whoa, so it is definitely there. His mother always had fitting prayers ready for every occasion, but this time, this wasn't a right moment to think of it, as he had to try and do something. This time even his mother would have been taken by surprise. She probably had to consult a neuropathology forum, as this case sure needs a professional's opinion. Something like, "Greetings. My boy hasn't been sleeping for a month or so and, you know, it already started to get out of hand. He sits in a dark room all day writing his stupid scribbles. I don't know why he got it into his head that he can write, because after all these years in business, he still has neither a name nor connections. You know what I mean? And besides," she was always fond of embarrassing him before getting to the point. "Besides, he gets an awful nervous tick when the one who scratches crawls up to his window to scratch a hole in his stomach. What prayer would you find appropriate for this occasion?" "The guillotine." "He's not really going to hit this thing with a bat, is he? My baby boy wouldn't hurt a fly. He has no guts for that." The first thing he did when the daze had worn off was grabbing the bat. Then he pressed himself against the wall by the window, and that was all he could do, for the nails were already scratching very close to the sill. "Squeaks! I'm coming for you, you whiny little boy with no guts. I'm going to scratch a hole in your belly to see if I can find them." He didn't want to see what was under the sill. He would prefer to dive than to look at it. Squeak! The nails struck the sill. He knew there were now black marks on it and some metal shavings got under the nails. Maybe some of the nails got broken, but the one who scratches doesn't care. It's got oh so many of them. He stared straight ahead. His teeth were clenched and saliva bubbled at the corners of his parted mouth. He was weeping without a sound, choking on a silent scream. He wasn't really going to hit this thing with a bat, was he? Whoa, something began to climb over the sill. He tried not to look, but he could see it. Oh my gosh. Look at all those little goblins. Some became to squishy fingers. Or guts. With lots of nails. That grew on top of each other like clamshells. In the moonlight he saw tufts of fur glistening on those finger guts. Just like on a rat's tail. Then he realized two things. Firstly, he got an insight on Timo's gifts. The thing is, his old cat constantly brought him something. The prey, those morbid little signs of unconditional love as he thought back then. But now he figured it out. Things that he had been secretly throwing out the window in the middle of the night weren't dead mice. Those were small fragments. Tiny pieces of the hideous fingers of the one who scratches. Look, Master, this nightmare is vulnerable. I drove it away. I brought you a piece of its flesh, which means you can sleep safely tonight. That's what Cat thought when its owners ruffled Timo's knobbly scratched head. What are those hallucinations? And secondly, realized with all the clarity this was the thing that lures cats into the darkness of summer nights from which they never return. The thing that took Timu away, and now had come for Selene. He stopped weeping, but was still breathing fast. Too fast, drawing air through bared teeth. Instead, it was boiling with rage. He wasn't really going to hit this thing with a bat, was he? He was. Damn right he was. He turned his head slowly and stared, eyes wide open, without blinking, as the glistening flesh clambered over the sill. He was waiting. He felt sick but decided he would throw up later. Right after he turns that thing into a bloody mess. I know you. You won't get her. You won't get anyone. The sounds that came out of his throat didn't resemble words, but that was exactly what he said. He charged at the thing and thrashed it. He smashed its fingers, guts, tails, or whatever the goddamn hell that was, and the bat seemed lighter than a feather. He had never been particularly strong, but now all his being became pure will, with the bat as its point of application. Whoa. Bloody shreds kept bursting out and sprinkling around as they smashed that like button. He paid no heed to the nails that were trying to get him, tearing his clothes, tearing his skin. He didn't care, he didn't even feel anything. Whoa. Anything but the desire to wipe this thing off the face of the earth, to smash out of reality if he had to. Finally, the corpse crumbled and distorted slid off the window frame, collapsing down. It was over. The blood-soaked bat slipped out of his hand and rolled across the floor, leaving a long black red smear. He wouldn't have been able to lift it. He was barely standing on his feet, and drool mixed with blood ran down his face. He didn't want to look down, because he could feel the wet heat spreading out around his stomach. He knew that he was going, or where that was going. He stumbled to a bed and fell on his back. A hoarse, gurgling breath came out of his mouth. More than anything, he wanted the cat to come. Happy Dreamland. Everybody loves tomato soup. Indeed. Tomato soup is Devil's favorite food. It reminds him of home. Elijah didn't like tomato soup. Everybody loves tomato soup. What about going to be his 1 minute commercial thing? Something changed. Mr. Jude Anthony Bench, 27 years old, 2 convictions, second-degree assault and battery and armed robbery of a convenience store, was lying on the lawn in front of House 8 Sycamore Street, looking up into the pink dawning sky with his eyes wide open. One of his eyes was damaged badly, badly damaged by the fall, but Mr. Bench was not too worried about it. He died a few hours ago. Before that happened, he threw up with something whitish, and the vomit was still forming on his cheek, resembling cheap strawberry yogurt because of some blood mixed in it. The police was informed about it. The corpse, not the fact that Mr. Bench couldn't hold his dinner and got his pants a little dirty by Miss Cora, a neat old lady who lived nearby and for the last decade never woke up later than 5 in the morning. Crikey. But the first one to notice the body was the cat. She looked like a purebred British shorthair in all respects except for the colour. Aside from the smoky grey head, it seemed as if she was dropped into a vat of white paint, with her lower part was dipped into the black one. As she passed by Mr. Bench, she smelled the air from a few meters away, more cautious than interested. Under different circumstances, she might have actually been interested in him, but the cat had already had a special someone say. She soared upwards, stabbing her milky white claws into the bark of a tall tree. The fur above the muscles of her back stood on end. In a few leaps, she reached a ledge and disappeared in the dark gape of an open window on the second floor. And alas, we have the cat in our... I don't know what you call it. in our possession once again. Oh gosh, we're waking up. He could barely breathe at the time, but when the cat came back, he felt better. Much better.
What have you done?
What have I done? I was defending. I wanted to save you. I wanted to save us both.
Fool.
That's right. But I just can't lose you.
It is too late.
It is too late? How comes? He wanted to object, say something trivial like, it's never too late as long as they're both alive. But he could not. The cat clung to him with her entire body, sticking her lips to his. He suddenly realized she wasn't in fact skinny, more of weary and quite strong. The next moment he felt his flesh tearing apart, and it tore easily, as quite some time has already passed. And with that, everything finally fell into its place. You? He had read about it in some magazine. Feral cats and many house ones, if their owners pass away, aren't above eating human flesh if they manage to reach it. But cats are very discerning, careful eaters. Having chosen a corpse, the cat remains faithful to it until it's stripped to the bone. Taken into account, and also the number of empty sleeping pills, cans everywhere, good God, there are too many of them. There was but a single conclusion to make. Oh my God, look at the cat's MILF. He died quite some time ago. It turns out that the pills failed him once again. The ceiling was swinging back and forth, swaying him like a caring mother swings a cradle. That's when he finally noticed it was the kitchen ceiling, and he was not lying in bed, but on the floor. Is this cat really angry at us? Some vague sounds were coming from outside the room, which grew more and more persistent over time. If he knew about Miss Clara's peculiar discovery, he would have probably guessed that the police were already breaking down his door. The cat hardly stuffed her mouth, choking, swallowing pieces without even chewing them. Holy Christ, he didn't mind. After all, a cat that had no home should eat well, shouldn't she? Although he got rid of the one who scratches, the street is still full of dogs and evil people. Even his mother would agree, and his mother never ever agreed with him. And yet he still had one question to ask. Say, did you love me? Even a little? For a moment the cat took a pause with her tusk and looked back in the eyes. Her body was shivering. A yellowish flap of flesh that occurred to be a piece of rotting fat was trembling in her long, sharp teeth.
I do.
You do? Then why are you eating us then? He bathed in her skein, saying sorry for the last time. The smell of fur, dust, and something sweet. The smell of carry-on. And that's the end of our life. The death of the author. Ending 2 out of 6. Oh, okay, so we missed out on one then. Ghost writer. Selene Apoptosis. To the last choice, indeed. Focus on the name. What is Selene? For some reason, the question bothered him. He vaguely remembered it had something to do with the mythology. Such things never really caught his attention, but fortunately he knew someone he could turn to. Professional sorts? Oh, in a car ride.
Meanie.
Meanie? Why's that? And who are you with that cheeky look on your mouth? Hope. You know I can't stand them. And you know it's me who'll have to take care of it after all. You're basically living in the office. Ethan never liked cats. Oh, for goodness sake. Going from one protagonist to another. And the dogs too. Not much of a difference. He didn't like the idea of keeping a predator at home. Even a small one. He couldn't quite explain why. Hope sighed. She closed the tab with the category's website, then slapped her husband lightly on the shoulder. Even so, the face of the Persian cat, deeply depressed and equally concave, still lingered before his mind's eye. Ethan held his hands in a conciliatory gesture. He knew it wasn't over yet. Hope is not the one to give in this easy. She never was, and for him there was something incredibly appealing about it. Come to think of it, quite possible it'll be him who capitulates in the end. So, in a relationship, you always have to sacrifice something. In 4.5 years, or even 5, according to Hope, he had learned this quite well. Suddenly, Hope frowned, looking at the screen.
Seems like you got an email from, damn. A tough one. I can't quite read it. It just hit your work mailbox.
Let me see. I've got a new project. The Middle Ages are fine and all, but they are about to start pouring out of my ears. Ethan reached for his laptop, but Hope grabbed it and dodged him.
Right. Why don't we talk contracts on a Sunday evening? So, which one of us is all work and no play?
Well, such are the benefits of freelance. Come on, give it back. Hope giggled and leaned over the armrest hanging over the floor. Hope's defenses withstood several more attacks each time Ethan thought the laptop would definitely hit the floor. For goodness sakes. And that cheeky smile. Then she gave Ethan a peck on the cheek and slid off the couch. The laptop returned to its owner.
All right. I give up.
Oh, no voice line. I mean, what if they'll actually give you a new contract, but on the same old Middle Ages? Now, that would be a twist. Yeah, hilarious one. But there was nothing about the Middle Ages in the letter, not a mention of the payment too. Ethan read it several times, leaving the formalities aside, but there was but one question in the letter. Ethan, or rather the part of him that was responsible for finding the accurate answers, got immediately engaged by the wording. What is Selene? Ethan rolled that question around in his mouth as if tasting it. At a glance, the answer was simple. Ethan's real passion was the early Renaissance, but he was a history consultant after all. At least he'd like to think of himself that way. The agency was paying him for a reason. He needed no research to tell that Selene was the goddess of the moon in the ancient Greece. The question, however, seemed to be way more intricate in its nature. Or at least that's what Ethan wants to think, because the Middle Ages were actually about to start pouring out of his ears. He was always diving into his work completely, and living an age where madness, curse, and death are contagious is an exhausting trial. He needed some distraction. Of course, he had a part-time job with those online courses, but the platform where he lectured wasn't planning anything new just yet. All in all, the request looked interesting, if not for one small matter, the payment, or rather the lack therefor. Ethan hesitated. The sender's name seemed familiar. He searched the email address and found out they already worked together on a couple of texts. Both times his efforts were duly paid for by the agency. Ethan never worked for free. It wasn't his principle, but rather a matter of necessity. The problem here was the fact that Ethan loved what he was doing too much. And if you are trying to make money for what you love, that's a slippery slope. A free service there, an unpaid consultation here. And there you go, back to splitting the sheet protectors 8 hours a day, watching your dreams rust away. Besides, Ethan doesn't want to let Hope down. Of course, she supported him when he decided to go freelance, but Ethan never wanted to take advantage of that. No, that won't do. He works only under contract and does not give free consultations. Just as he was about to give that as a response, Hope's fair head popped from behind the door.
Are you coming?
Coming where? On a walk? Hope brought up the cat thing a few more times. Ethan protested absently. So his thoughts went back to the letter again and again, to that question. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to find out the answer. It was no longer a matter of helping an acquaintance whose name Ethan immediately forgot. No, it was Ethan himself who needed a little help with distraction, and an answer. That was a weird thing to do, but Ethan waited until Hope was fast asleep. Only then did he sneak over to his laptop to write a response. Certainly he had no real answer as of yet. He threw in a few dozen polite words, the general meaning of which was he had taken up the case. Then he clicked send. When Ethan returned to bed, Hope was still breathing slow and deep. He listened to her breath for a while, trying not to think that he had broken his own rule. After all, he really needed a distraction. No matter the strength of your affection, sooner or later you will want to take a break. It was another thing he had learned over the past 4.5 years. If Ethan had to point out when things started to be off, he would say it was on a Saturday. That is, about a week after the first letter. But this, of course, wouldn't be accurate. Those weird things started happening almost immediately after he pressed the send button. The first night he saw a room in his dreams. A sofa. A single sofa. A chipped, white ceiling and similarly rough walls lit with fluorescent lamps. Ethan couldn't see the lamps themselves, but he recognized the cold, shimmering light. They often use those lamps in the offices. The light filled the room to the brim. Ethan thought it was about to burst, and then the light would splash all over the room just like the juice of a squished tomato. Apart from the walls and the lights, the room had a red sofa. The sofa stood just a bit aside from the center. Not too large, quite faded, flooded with shimmering white light. The slight made the sofa seem to be trembling a little, and the room trembled with it. Suddenly, Ethan thought it would be way better if the sofa was standing right in the middle. Then he felt something on his temple. A touch. Hope? Oh, he had to flinch, scream, stumble to the side, yet he couldn't. He was paralyzed. Only his eyes could move, and they desperately tried to reach beyond his field of vision, where something was touching his temple. Ethan felt a faint flow of air as if someone was whispering in his ear. He didn't hear the whisper, just one word. Ethan no longer remembered what the word was when he jumped up in his bed, gasping for air. Hope muttered something in her sleep and turned to the other side. It took a long time to get back to sleep, but by morning Ethan did pass out, and when he woke up, the dream wiped out of his mind pretty quick. The task at hand interested him much more than some muck spilling out of his subconscious. He was thinking about the task while he was chewing on the morning toast, driving to the bank, all the way back. It was just like a Christmas present waiting for its time in the closet. The more you tell yourself you shouldn't think about it, the more you do. Exactly. At home, Ethan tried to stick to his plan, working on the project he was paid for, but ended up sitting over a single report of several hours. He couldn't squeeze out a letter. To hell with it. After all, he was almost done with his current project. It wouldn't be much of a problem if he presented the result a bit later on, would it? Besides, it was really time for him to get a breather. One can't be spending so much time in a world where madness, curse, and death are contagious. To hell with it, Ethan thought as he closed the files of a project he was paid for. There was plenty of information, but Ethan knew he would not get an answer right away. The accurate answers, just like the precious pearls, lay at great depths. He had to go down to the very bottom of the ocean. Ethan was not afraid. He had done it many times. His counterpart might have to wait for a week or so, but Ethan knew he'll manage to crack the riddle. Whoa. Now we're seeing hallucinations here. What he didn't know is that what else could he found at those great depths? And at some point in his investigation, things started happening. He started hearing sparse phrases even though he never turned on TV or radio, and Hope wasn't even at home. When he sat in front of a screen once again trying to connect the dots in his research, he could feel someone looking at the back of his head. When he turned around, of course, there was no one in the room. Eventually, he taught himself not to turn around. He just got angry, pushing fingers into his temples when the familiar feeling appeared again. He started losing things, or rather, things would disappear and then appear in the strangest of places. One day he found his pencil in the freezer, stuck in a minced meat baguette. Even when the baguette melted down, he couldn't pull the whole pencil out. All Ethan got was a bloody stump. Ouch. And things just started to go double. At this point he could stop and think of it, but got distracted by the coffee maker and mindlessly shoved the slump into the trash bin. Sorry, the stump. Very similarly written. Ooh, a shadow there. There was something wrong with the shadows too. They were moving on their own, and there was nothing moving in the room. They became sharper, thicker and deeper, and it was the case in the whole apartment. Sometimes they moved. Of course, Ethan only felt like they were moving. It couldn't have been any other way. Ethan didn't really pay attention to any of this, just like he did with that dream he had. All of that seemed very familiar, as he already experienced similar things during the periods of intense work, where his nervous system was exhausted by the workload. There always was an irrational explanation, the stress, or those new, much more environmentally friendly light bulbs that Hope had installed all around the apartment. Besides, it's so easy to dismiss this sort of things when you're deeply invested into something, and this question really got Ethan involved. Every time he seemed to get it right, his thought went off. Like he was climbing a rock, but a safe ledge suddenly turned slippery. And the next thing he knew, he's at the bottom again. He never faced anything like that during his previous research. There were times he had to spend weeks or months looking for the right answers. Those were the tricky cases, but at least he could always tell how his research is progressing. This time he was stumbling in his tracks without knowing why, and that was all he could tell. The week was over, but he still had nothing to send back to his contact. In his reply, Ethan asked a couple of questions. Not that he was really interested, just as a courtesy. And that's how their surprisingly exciting email conversation started. With this, Ethan's contact grew to be something more. Something of a friend, maybe. He never asked how Ethan's work was progressing. This was the question Ethan asked himself, and the answer was never good for him. Of course, he started sleeping badly. Falling asleep was easy, but he woke up many times during the night, sometimes in cold sweat. Ethan could not remember his dreams. It feels like any time when the protagonist or this character has any kind of affiliation with Selene, bad dreams start happening and bad things start to occur. That night he woke up about 3 or 4 times. At first, Ethan was lucky enough to fall asleep almost immediately after he woke up. But at some point his eyes got open again. This time the sleep wouldn't come. Ethan felt terribly thirsty. He found no slippers on the usual spot. The noise could wake up Hope, so he decided not to look for them, and only regrets it when approaching the kitchen. The floor was bloody cold. So cold that Ethan unconsciously looked down. Oh. What the? A silhouette of something. They all seemed to be blurry. And when he was looking up again, he saw a shadow. No doubt that shadow belonged to a woman, a naked woman. Ethan could clearly see the points of her nips as the shadow turned around. No wonder, it's freezing cold here. The shadow moved slowly along the wall, floating in a rectangular pool filled with moonlight. She was dancing. She was dancing, and the humming silence in Ethan's ears was her music. Ethan was watching her, unable to move. He was paralyzed, just like back then in his dream, but he did not remember it. At that moment, he didn't remember anything at all, couldn't think about anything at all. What is this? He felt an itch in his eyes and a momentary urge to blink. For a fraction of a second, he could only see the thick, vicious darkness, and when he opened his eyes again, there was no shadow anymore. The glowing rectangle shifted its place and now lay on the kitchen floor at Ethan's feet. He could see the cold white lights flowing into the seams between the tiles on the floor. For some reason, he took a deep breath and then stepped forward into the rectangle of the light. Nothing happened. And what was supposed to happen? What did he really see? Did he really see anything? It could just be a shadow of Hope. He walked deeper into the room, much bolder, grabbed the decanter and started to drink in big, greedy sips. Water streamed down his chin and chest, hitting the tiles on the floor and poured into the grooves of the seams. No, that wasn't a delusion. The kitchen was completely empty and the floor felt warm again. And yet it wasn't a delusion. And all of this was begging for a rational explanation. That's why Ethan decided he should talk to Hope in the morning for some hope. Something's changed. Did you give anyone the apartment keys? You know, by chance?
What?
Hope froze with a cup at her lips and blinked several times. Maybe you've let someone in?
I didn't. No! What's with those questions?
I feel like someone is visiting our place.
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said. It's been a while since I started noticing random things vanish. And yesterday Hope frowned. She looked at Ethan as if a toad had just popped out of his mouth.
Yesterday, you... What?
Answer evasively. Answer evasively. No, say it bluntly. I saw someone in our kitchen last night. Some girl. The deep line on Hope's forehead disappeared. She leaned back in her chair and laughed, throwing her head back.
What a show you put on. Okay, fine, I confess. I did steal your cupcake. I mean, am I supposed to? I barely see you lately, so sweet pastries are my best shot to get some fun at night. Damn, I didn't realize you still remembered that cupcakes even exist. It was lying around the fridge for what? 3 days?
Hope glanced at Ethan, expecting him to start laughing too, yet he still looked very serious indeed. She noticed for the first time that the whites of his eyes were pinkish and full of broken capillaries. Her smile slowly faded. Come on, maybe you left the keys unattended somewhere.
I always leave my keys when I'm in the office. But I'm pretty sure there's no cat burglars among my colleagues.
What do you mean cat burglars?
Come to think of it, we should have hired a bunch. That'd balance the risk of going broke we have on a monthly basis.
You sure none of your colleagues would play a joke on us?
A joke?
Yeah, exactly.
Good God, Ethan. You look like you're about to eat me alive. Take a bun instead. Tastes better, trust me.
Are you sure? I'm kidding. Hope pulled her chair close to Ethan and took his hand.
Please, hon. Promise me you'll take a break after that project of yours is finished. I mean, one psycho is enough for our family.
Yeah, if you say so.
You promise?
Ethan suddenly felt like a total idiot. A tired total idiot. And there you go in the kitchen? Yeah, sure. He probably overworked to the point he started being delirious at times. Maybe even walked in his sleep. He squeezed Hope's fingers lightly. I promise. Sorry, I'm a moron. I probably stopped seeing the difference between dream and reality.
Why don't you call Laura?
No. A shrink is the last thing I need right now. My bad, sure, but that'd just be too cruel. What I need is to finish a project. After all the gears on my head will fall into place, I give you my word.
Oh, don't be like that. I mean, there's no need to start full-fledged therapy anyway. Sometimes, talking through your worries with a professional is all it takes to feel better.
If you say so. At least I shouldn't have pressed you on it. I get that you have enough problems of your own right now. How's it going in your new position? Hope rested her head on his shoulder and shrugged.
Not fired yet, apparently.
Well, that's good news.
Seriously though, I haven't figured it out yet.
Wow.
Those new responsibilities are exciting. Oh, but I always feel like I'm 10 times slower than I should be. I should probably get ready for a nice, fat piece of overtime by the end of the month.
Ethan kissed her forehead, closed his eyes, and squeezed the bridge of his nose. Well, I'm not head of the department as of yet, but I seem to have the same stuff on my plate. Just how did you manage not to pester me with stupid questions?
Well, I eat cupcakes cupcakes at night. You should give it a try.
Nah, because there's no cupcakes left to eat. Hope poked Ethan's cheek a couple of times with her finger.
Anyway, don't worry.
If you say so.
I didn't give keys to anyone, and the only cat anything I've let inside was an actual stray cat.
Which actual stray cat was that?
Now that I think of it, it's been ages since we had any company. Maybe we should.
No. A cat? What cat? Hope sighed and pulled away.
Please don't get all worked up, okay? At least I'm being open with you. Don't worry, she didn't wander around.
So it is Selene, isn't it? Hope, we've talked this over already.
We've talked over what? The fact that what I want doesn't really matter.
Damn it, Hope, this is my apartment and I...
And you're staying here alone now?
Hope finished her tea in a couple of gulps.
I have to go to the office.
She stopped at the door, not turning around. Gosh, that's quite a dark sight to see.
Sorry about the cat. She was really skinny, and I felt sorry for her.
Ah, so she does go from place to place then, Selene does.
I also feel sorry for myself, Ethan, because I'm lonely. Really lonely.
This time, Ethan felt like an angry idiot. He got up from the table and reached for Hope. Hope,
Don't. I'll start crying. It'll take time. And I don't have any to spare right now. See you tonight.
Okay. I don't know why I was thinking Ethan was going to say see you tonight. See you tonight. He didn't know what else to say, so he followed Hope into the hall like a silent shadow. He thought the right words would come to him, but the entrance door closed and he remained silent. Ethan sighed. He regretted his decision to talk about the night episode. He regretted how the talk turned out. He felt sorry for himself, and for Hope. After all, Ethan was well aware of that. He really didn't spend enough time with her. At first because of the agency project, now because of a question to which he still could not find an answer. It was time to end this. He's going to make some coffee, then he'll open up the laptop and write up some answer. It won't be an accurate one, but it's really time to finish that work marathon. After all, he doesn't even get paid for his time. Ethan nodded to the closed door and turned around, ready to execute the plan. And that's where the shadow appeared again. That's when he saw her. Just for a split second, but damn, he saw her. A black-haired girl flashed in the doorway of one of the rooms. Not even flashed, but drifted, like a... Eva's mouth went dry. Shadow. Of course, there was no one in the room. This has gone too far. Even had gone too far, but he couldn't turn back. Even though he was going to. He didn't even make any coffee. He wanted to get rid of that question, get a good night's sleep, and forget about the whole thing. Forget about that shadow that danced in his kitchen. Forget about the pale silhouette that wandered throughout his apartment. Forget that at this very moment someone is looking at the back of his head, and that look makes his skin feel as cold as the kitchen floor last night, and the hairs, one by one, stand on end. Ethan clenched his teeth, not with anger, but with some new emotion he couldn't name. The blood hummed in his ears, louder and louder. It will all be over after he writes the letter. It will be over. He opened his laptop. His hands were shaking a little, and was putting his fingers over the keyboard when his cell phone rang. Ethan flinched. He stared blankly for a few seconds as the vibrating rectangle of glass and plastic crawled across the table. Do not answer. Don't do it. Suddenly he grabbed his phone and pushed the accept button. Ethan himself didn't know how that happened. He just did it. That's all. The phone pressed tight against his ear. He waited for a hushed, gurgling voice to call his name and tell him to look behind. Or what is supposed to happen in cases like this? You again.
Ethan?
Oh, hello, Hope. Hope?
Were you expecting someone else, you dolt?
Possibly.
Okay, sorry. I'm super uneasy, and so I'm talking nonsense.
Yeah, I'm uneasy too. And that was completely true.
Look, am I distracting you right now?
No. You are, and I'm very happy about that. Go on, please.
That's great. Look, it didn't come off well at breakfast, right?
Yep. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm being awful.
No, I'm sorry. Both of us have it hard now, so let's try not to fight, okay?
Exactly. Great idea.
Why don't we go out tonight?
That's a great idea.
Save for groceries? Counts as going out, if you ask me. I'll go crazy being cooped up like that.
Oh, so that's what's driving me nuts. Should go out for Selene more often.
So what do you say?
Okay, we're going to buy all the Selene tonight. Ethan suddenly realized that the blood wasn't buzzing in his ears. No one was looking at the back of his head. And if he turned around, he would only see Hope's socks that she'd left on the chair again. Hope, I love you.
I love you too, very much. See you tonight.
After finishing the call, he turned around. The socks were resting peacefully on the chair, which meant everything was okay. He went back to the mail and only then noticed several new letters. 2 of them were from his counterpart. Ethan hesitated. He had already decided his course of action concerning the question, so there was no harm in taking a look. He won't feel any guilt. After all, he had already done far more than he should have. Of course, he is a lifesaver for those wanting to sell books mentioning historical accuracy, but having no intention to pay for it properly. And so what? He doesn't have to do a perfect job for free. Hell, he doesn't even work for free. That's what Ethan thought. Then he opened the 2 letters and changed his highly reasonable decision. His counterpart was asking how soon he would get an answer. So this happened after all. The tone was very polite and apologetic. He wasn't expecting anything, but he really needed the help of someone competent. According to the emails, he wasn't doing very well. The poor man has been suffering from insomnia for an insane amount of time, and it seems that he too began imagining things. It was as if Ethan saw himself from the outside. He suddenly felt very sorry for his acquaintance. Of course, he had begun to feel sorry for him earlier, but now Ethan felt a sharp bitter pity. He realized that if he helps his acquaintance, he will help himself. But if he steps back now, what is the value of a specialist who is afraid of a little challenge? As Hope once said, the career ladder is made of thorn. Of course, he no longer works in an office, but professional growth requires twice as much effort if you are self-employed. And besides, Ethan had Hope. Hope, who never gives in so easily and forgets her socks on the chair. Hope, who loves him very much. Hope, who will go to the store with him tonight because being cooped up like that could drive one crazy. This must be what was happening to his acquaintance right now. Ethan had to help him. Not because of money, but because he could, and because it was the right thing to do. They will both finish their projects, and then they will have a good rest. They might even go out for a glass of beer together. So Ethan thought, and got back to the question with the newfound strength. The pages of the books did not rustle in the far corner of the room. The shadows weren't wandering in the corridor, and certainly no one looked at the back of his head until the evening. And in the evening, Hope came back. Hope looked up from a magazine and leaned over the armrest.
You had a call from the agency?
Ethan just got back from the shower. He froze in place, clutching the towel at his wrist. Something cold stirred uncomfortably in his stomach. The project? You completely forgot about the agency project, and it had been more than 2 weeks. The deadline was very close. He stared from the phone, but Hope just waved her hand lazily.
Don't worry, I picked it.
What did you tell them?
I told them you'd stop eating, sleeping, and loving anything other than work, so they'll get those files all nice and shiny.
Great.
Pretty accurate, huh?
Yeah? Just don't pick up my phone again, okay? Hope shrugged.
Sure. I mean, it was you who asked me to answer the calls in the first place.
Damn. Yes, I know. When I just started working for them, it was important to let them see I am always in touch. Now that I've passed the probation period, there's no point in piling this on you any longer. Thank you for covering for me.
No problem. If you're getting a call, and I'm not too lazy to go pick it up, I can watch your back.
I can keep watching your back. No, you really shouldn't. This project is complicated. I'd rather deal with it myself. Even set rigid. He never considered himself a good liar, but Hope didn't seem to notice anything, or didn't show that she seemed to notice anything. She sighed, pretending to be upset, and rolled her eyes.
Well now, guess I'm being fired from an unpaid security position without any honors or compensation.
Goodness sakes, Hope, you know how to be cheeky, don't you?
Capitalism sucks.
Sometimes it does. Ethan leaned over, tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, and looked into her eyes. His hand remained on Hope's cheeks. Your help is very important to me. Hope's hand went over his. She closed her eyes.
I know.
I couldn't have done it without you.
What else is new?
Stop it, Hope. They kissed. When Hope pulled away, she looked pleased, a sly smile on her lips. Are we still going to the Shawbear store?
I'm not sure.
What? They reached for each other again, but the phone gave a shrill ring. After the phone call this morning, Ethan turned the silent mode off. Oh well. My city needs me! Ethan briefly pressed his lips to her forehead. Hope sighed and slapped his ass.
If God existed, he'd really want us to buy some zucchinis.
Zucchinis, okay.
I'll go and get dressed.
So you're saying you what? Okay, anyways. The call was from the agency. They needed more details and dates. Ethan went out into the hallway and tried to make it sound as plausible as he could. Yes, he understands that the deadline is very close. No, there was no serious hitches in the work. Yes, he will send everything on time. When the call finally ended, Ethan's neck and face were flushed by this time. He was a lousy liar after all. Ethan had to catch his breath. When he returned to the room, Hope was reaching for his laptop. What are you doing? Hope glanced at him over the shoulder. This time she looked surprised.
Nothing special, really. I just wanted to print out some discount coupons.
Wait a minute, you never have discount coupons. You're a liar.
What about it?
Ethan left a bunch of files and tabs open. They had nothing to do with the agency project, and he didn't want Hope to see them. After all, she did know enough about his projects to serve as a sort of secretary about all the projects except for one that Ethan shouldn't have taken because it wasn't paid for. Maybe his fears were irrational. Maybe Hope wouldn't blame him. But Ethan felt ashamed, and he didn't want to take any chances after what happened this morning. I have lots of unsaved files in there. Some important information might get lost. Can I print those coupons myself? Ethan felt the heat rise again in his neck and cheeks. Hope stared at him for a few seconds. Ethan couldn't read the expression on her face and then creeped him out. He was ready to hear the reproaches. He even agreed with them in his mind, but Hope simply walked away.
Sure. I'll send them to your mail.
Thank you. And the moon is up there. They spent most of the way to the store in tense silence. A few times Ethan asked something just to make sure Hope was still talking to him. Hope was, though the answers were dry and she never even attempted to make a joke. It's not that bad, Ethan told himself. It's not that bad after all if you repeat it again and again. You could buy a little time, but in the end the anxiety will prevail. It always does. Ethan's mind quickly figured out the owner was trying to trick it and spat out the chewing gum. At that moment, Ethan got caught in an avalanche of thoughts he didn't want to deal with, and couldn't in his current state. Something had to be done, to be said, but what? Maybe he should actually do something after all. Ethan imagined touching Hope's fingers, and he immediately saw her pulling the hand back, her eyes glistening, how she opens her mouth to ask the question Ethan had no answer to. They'd have to talk one way or another. Ethan didn't know where to start without burying himself even deeper. He had been thinking about it the whole time but never came up with anything. Oh dear. Is that some kind of bad outcome? The huge supermarket on the next block, a place they had long dubbed the store, was bustling with life despite the rather late hour. As soon as they entered the large glass doors, the tension began to come off on its own. And that, folks, is where we're going to be ending off this episode on this particular endeavor. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you will be excited to see more of this particular tale in the next time of Selene Apoptosis. It seems as if anything Selene related comes up, these hallucinations, shadows, bad dreams and stuff like that, they always come up. And I think that Selene the cat is the source of it. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know down in the comment section below, or by playing this game for yourselves and then leaving a comment for the developers to see what you think about this game. Remember, there's a link down in the description below where you'll be able to download this game for yourselves to play. Thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourselves.